Call to order the meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission for July 24, 2023. Good to see each and every one of you here this morning. We'll ask at this time that our Commission Chairman, Jeff Phillips, lead us in our prayer and Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please stand.
Bow with me, please. Our Father in heaven, Lord, we're so thankful for this day. We're so thankful for the many, many blessings of life. God, thank you for allowing us to come before your throne this morning. There are those that are heavy on our hearts, relatives, friends, neighbors that have needs, and we ask that you meet the needs of those families. God, we ask you to be with this commission as we make decisions that are in the best interest of this county. God bless Rutherford County. God bless Tennessee. God bless the United States of America. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, and you may be seated. Madam Secretary, I ask that you call the roll this time. Determination of quorum.
Jim Averwater. Jeff Phillips.
Present.
Mike Cush. Present. Lee Bogle. Here. Charlotte P. Here. Trey Gooch.
Here.
David Jones. Chip Pinion. Marvin Whitworth.
Here.
Jim Thompson.
Here.
Pettis Reed.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Do have a quorum. Good to see each and every one of you here this morning. At this time, we're going to ask for the approval of our minutes, and I'll call on our Vice Chairman, Commissioner Lee Bogle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are no minutes to approve at this time.
Thank you, sir. Item 5 is public comment period. We have not received any calls, anyone wishing to make a comment at this time, so we will move on to item 6 at this time. Items withdrawn or deferred?
No, sir. No, sir. Everything's on the agenda.
All right. Moving right on into our new business. We begin with item A, submitted for preliminary plan approval. Number 1, the retreat at Sulphur Springs Road, 23-1002, 18 lots on 60.1 acres, zone RM, located along Sulphur Springs Road. Middle Tennessee Properties is the applicant. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. As you stated, this property is located along Sulphur Springs Road. The applicant is proposing to construct a county road and divide 18 lots off of it. Most of these lots are greater than 2 acres in size. Most of them are significantly larger than that, as a matter of fact. There are delineated wetlands on this site along with a stream that extends through the property, which does reduce the amount of usable area. You see there's one road accessing the property from Sulphur Springs, which terminates in a cul-de-sac toward the eastern end of the property. The subdivision regulations allow for a maximum cul-de-sac length of 1,600 linear feet. This exceeds that. There is a letter in your agenda packet from the design engineer explaining the reason for the request for a variance to that or a waiver to that particular provision. There is a 3-lane road improvement identified on the county and city's long-range transportation plans through this property. Staff has requested a portion of that right-of-way for this development to be dedicated as part of that submittal. Mike's kind of highlighting that there. 30 feet on this side. The idea would be that in the future, when the other properties to the east develop, that the other right-of-way would be acquired at that time. With that, most of our comments have been addressed. The design engineer for the project is here. I'll let Mike talk. I know, like I said, there's a lot of wetlands and drainage issues on this property, so I'll turn it over to Mike to let him kind of go over some of those things. Mike.
Thank you, Douglas. As you can see on the map, it's the yellow highlighted parcels kind of east of 840 and south of Leanna. It's on the west side of Sulphur Springs Road, and a little reference, the area directly across the street is the recycling center, Leanna Recycling Center. This is the Bethel Church, and this is a little market. I forget the name of it right here, but This is the property that they're proposing to subdivide. They plan on bringing a road on the northern edge of the property, as kind of shown on this preliminary plan. And as Doug said, that they have identified some wetlands, some streams, and added stream buffers. But if you know this area is prone to sinkholes. There is a large sinkhole on the, I guess, the southern, well, a lot of this property is in a sinkhole, and I'll turn on the topography and let you see it. So this area behind the church is a large sinkhole, and this area also is part of it. So it is a well-known sinkhole, and let me see if I can get to it. This area was studied by the USGS back in 2005 that looked at sinkhole floodings in Murfreesboro and Rutherford County in 2001, 2002. And one of the areas that they looked at was what they call the Hooper Bottoms sinkhole area. And this is a map from that area, and I hope you can see it. Let me zoom in a little bit. So these gray areas are areas in the county that do not drain to rivers, creeks, and streams. They drain to sinkholes. This is Thompson Lane for reference right here. This is Lebanon Pike 231. This blue area is Hooper Bottoms, if you know where that's at, that bend in Thompson Lane. Here is 840 right here, and this property, right, let me see if I find it. Yeah, I think it's right in this area right here. So when you have a rainfall event in a sinkhole watershed, you can have an area that doesn't get a drop of rain, but water can come out of sinkholes. So we have to be very, very, very careful with these, what I call volume-sensitive areas, because if there's an issue with heavy rains, prolonged rain events, day after day after day, the river comes up and it doesn't drain out, these sinkholes can back up and cause issues. So just looking at this map, you can see a large part of Rutherford County has these sinkhole watersheds that USGS has identified. So when we see a development in these areas, we, sends off red flags to me and my staff, and we want to make sure that any development in this area, one, does not impact the new houses that are proposed for this area, or whatever the development is, but two, also, you're not impacting the surrounding neighbors. So what we'll do, we've got a lot of information on this area besides the study. Let me get a slide for you. So the city of Murfreesboro and the county went together and did a lot of tests in these sinkhole areas, and they did what was called dye tracings. So just for reference, this is 840 Thompson Lane. Here's Sulphur Springs Road. This blue dot is that sinkhole. So the red dots indicate where they put dye into a sinkhole, and the blue dot is where they've detected the dye from downstream locations. So they've determined that there's some interconnectivity along this path that leads out to the West Fork of the Stones River. So what we have to do is make sure that, one, we don't impede the flow, and also don't impact the neighbors. So what we'll most likely need them to do is that, map again. So, like I said, this large sinkholes in this area here. A lot of these houses, the ground will need to be elevated to protect them from another substantial or extended rainfall event. We are in that sinkhole basin area. Like I said, these house locations will need to be elevated. To offset that, what we'll do is have them over-excavate other areas to bring that elevation down so it doesn't impact the surrounding neighbors. And all of these houses will be up and over what we call a local spillover event. So if this big basin spills up, these houses will be high and dry, and we've over-excavated an area that hopefully will not impact any of the surrounding properties. The church property, I believe, is in these parcels here, and that store is right here. So that's what we'll do when they submit construction plans. We'll look at the elevation that these proposed houses will be at, the volume that they're filling in this area, and then also the offset of that volume. Now, because this is in or near this large sinkhole, we'll require a geotechnical engineer to be on site when this road is constructed, and then also when these pads are constructed for these houses. So to ensure that there's not an issue with the future home sites and the road. So I know that's a lot to be said, but this is a large depression. I will kind of show you another feature that have to also evaluate. This is called multi-shade, and it's kind of like the old relief maps. You can kind of see the depression. There's that old farm pond that's become a wetland, and then the streams that lead to it. So there's going to be a lot of work that's going to be done on this to ensure that the houses are protected, the new houses are protected, and the surrounding properties are protected. So, sorry, go ahead.
No. What would construction around this, how would that affect the water quality? I mean, you just said it's connected to many things downstream. And how is the sinkhole protected? Because it
Right. So
plays a vital part in the environment.
yes, it does. So when they do construction plan, sorry. So these water quality buffers will remain in place. They will be protected by erosion control measures. The excavation area will be protected as well as they can. The throat of the sinkhole in this area will be protected. So during construction, we'll have erosion control and prevention measures to help keep silt and sediment out of that area, because if you have a lot of silt and sediment washed down, it plugs the sinkhole up, and it doesn't function like it once did. So, but also we'll look at the construction plans will look at water quality measures to meet our requirements. So typically we have two type of requirements: one for quantity, the volume of runoff or the rate of runoff, and also the quality. So that's another aspect that they will address for the construction plans. So we don't have any submitted construction plans just yet, so we're not sure what's going to be proposed for that.
Mike, I'm going to work under the assumption that if this project is approved, that they will have building envelopes delineated on the final plat so that people aren't trying to put houses in other places they don't need to be.
Yes, sir, and they will have, if I can zoom in, they will have minimum pad, minimum floor elevations of not just the primary structure, but also any accessory buildings that would be there as well. So it's kind of like a valley. You might have your house on one end, but you could build a shop or a barn on the other side of the valley. You know, you would have to traverse the stream down here, this waterway, but as long as the house is, or the barn is elevated, it should be protected.
And I think that's a little bit of my concern is building driveways and that sort of thing over an area that needs to be protected. I mean, will we be drawing out areas where they cannot do
Yes.
anything?
So there are, with the delineated wetlands and buffers that go along with it, they are protected no-build areas. This area down at the bottom of the sinkhole did not come back as a protected wetlands or a stream, so it does not require an actual buffer on this part. The upper section does. So, yes, it is a concern of ours. We definitely don't want anybody building in the lower areas that could be flooded quite often. Want to take advantage of the high ground, build on the higher elevations. That's why, you know, anything that's built on here will have to meet these required pad elevations. But it is, like I said, back to
Commissioners, further comments or questions? Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know subdivision regulations are what they are. This piece of property, to me, begs for 5-acre lots. We could better protect our sinkhole drainage. We could also better protect the homeowners long-term. But this is the type of development, to me, that spells danger. And I think this is just exactly the type of development that begs for 5-acre lots. Once again, to protect those homeowners in the future, it would be much, much better for those larger lots and less intrusive for the type of problems that could occur with this type of development. Also, let me ask a question that's probably also not real pertinent to yes or no, but who is Middle Tennessee Properties? Who are they? We had experience with them, and what's their address?
I have not. The representative here, he might.
Yeah,
be able to
I
shed
think
some
we,
light.
in the, I don't remember which development, it seems like we have had some dealings with them in the past, but as far as, if you look at the, yeah, because they're out of,
Says,
zoom in on that, Mike, I can't.
not, somewhere in Missouri, I believe.
Go ahead and ask for the
Hyatt,
representative.
Missouri.
That'd be good. Yeah.
We'll ask for the representative to come forward this time to answer any questions you may have or to let them say more about what their plans are. Give us your name and address.
Chris McGuire, Huddleston Steel Engineering. The applicant is Dr. Ribeiro. He is a local client of ours out of Brentwood. When I say local, Middle Tennessee. And he has done developments in Rutherford County between the city and actual county. As far as some of the concerns that Mike's brought up, we have evaluated the site extensively. When he states that that the whole area is a sinkhole, I think there's a throat and a sinkhole on a portion of the property, but the majority of our concern is how far it backs up to make sure that we don't fill too much in that area before it breaks over the road and create worse storm events. We've run an analysis on how much the imperviousness will increase and how much filling we plan on doing. And on our grading plan, we've already shown compensating cut and fill, and we've already calculated all these measures to make sure that we're not going to create a stormwater issue. This piece of property has had about 3 or 4 different concepts on it. It went everything from 10,000 square foot lots to 5-acre tracts cut off with a ton of flags. And I think that this is probably going to be the most palatable. It's a single road, and then it'll be homes lined right against the top of the road. There's only about 4 lots that's going to need padding within that critical flood elevation. So it's not all 18 lots that are having padding in the flood area. It's just the 4 closest to Sulphur Springs Road. And we will end up putting setbacks to ensure where we're going to put the buildings. And we'll work with staff and come up with whatever they would like. I think I'd anticipated only 1 lot needing to cross a creek, and I think it's the very end one. At the end of the cul-de-sac, there's a little wet weather conveyance that they might have to build a drive across, but the major creeks and flow paths are not planned to be crossed.
So, and also, this is aerial imagery from May of 2010 when we had the tremendous flooding events. It rained May 1st and 2nd, and they flew this aerial imagery May 4th. So water hadn't receded yet, but you can see it's still up pretty high in the property. Looks around 544 elevation or thereabouts. And that kind of matches with other sinkholes in the area. So we would look at historical data, elevations, spillover elevations. So building this road and lots along this ridge, edge, or whatever you want to call it, we've got to make sure that if we do have another flood event or even a greater flood event, that the pads that the houses sit on are above that local spillover elevation.
Make sure I understand what I'm looking at, Mike. There, is that the property line just?
In yellow, it's these 2 big tracks here, sir.
That was one of the questions I had, is we had a copy of flood like this, because I've seen some development take place, and supposedly it'd never be a problem, and I knew from experience it would be a problem. What about on these sinkholes like this? We get a flood like that. Now I got 10-year-old kids out playing. What are we going to do to protect that? I mean, we have to have a fence around the pool. What are we going to do to protect these kids?
That we typically don't. I don't know if the legal counsel can chime in or not, but it's typically we don't fence off ponds or sinkholes. I'm not a lawyer and don't want to pretend to be one. It becomes an attractive nuisance where, you impede the potential firefighter the ability to go in and rescue somebody. But typically we don't. If we can, we try to keep these areas in a natural state, them wooded, keep them natural.
Other questions? Mr. Medworth.
Mike, in the upper right-hand corner there of what I'm seeing, is that brownish area is up on top, right above that. Is that water?
No, I believe that's probably plowed field.
Okay. Okay, the second question is more to the developer. Are you going to develop this and build the houses, or are you going to sell me the lot to build my own house?
My understanding in talking with our client that he plans on building the houses there. Now, you know how things go. If money goes the right way and someone wants to come buy it, I'm sure something would happen. But in talking with him, that's his intentions.
Well, a couple of those lots, if I buy that lot and I want to build my house at the back of the lot rather than the front, will there be restrictions that I cannot cross that creek, the wet weather conveyance, whatever you want to call it, and build my house at the back?
What we'll do is we'll show alternate rear setbacks for these properties. And basically what it'll say is, hey, this is your building box. And we'll have it as close to the road as possible and then as deep as we show the filling. That way they can't come in there after we're done and add 10 more feet to the pad and do anything with the watershed. We'll put that rear setback on that fill area, and that'll really tie them into, this is where you can build. So we can take some measures, and I'm happy to work with staff to make those measures happen.
Well, I see the potential that there could be problems 20, 30 years down the road if somebody decides, hey, I want to build a house at the back. Because some of the might go back to that again, where you show the, excuse me.
Sorry. The plan itself.
On these on the left over here, they're going to have to run their septic lines back to the drain field across that wet weather conveyance. They're going to have to go across that. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So they will be disturbing that area, running their septic lines back to it. And I'm concerned with a couple of those. The large one right there in the middle is that, boy, there's a good big place to build right there. And I can run my road right down the property line and not get in the wet area and cross that little conveyance, and I can build me a nice house back there. Are we going to stop that now, or are we going to deal with that in 4 or 5 years when somebody wants to build?
We'll limit it with the plat. Once we make a rear setback, that will justify the location which they're able to build. So if we bring that rear setback all the way up to, say, the 60-foot buffer or to wherever we plan on filling for their pads, that'll forever restrict that lot as to where they can build unless someone comes through with a re-sub plat and Planning Commission approves an alternate setback. Is that correct, Doug?
In general, something like a setback change and amendment plat probably wouldn't have to come back before the whole commission. But obviously, if somebody brought that in for us to look at, we would evaluate it with the understanding of why it was set in the first place. So we probably would tell them not to waste their time submitting anything.
Commissioner Bogle?
I had 2 questions. One's follow-up on Commissioner Marvin Whitworth there is the septic. Are you proposing sanitary sewer, or will these be serviced by septic?
They will be traditional septic with soil sites.
So back to his question, how does that cross those I think it's lots 4 through 11 that would have to cross that buffer?
They'll end up doing probably trenching across it with a ditch witch. I mean, it'll be a 2-inch piece of PVC hard line to get across there. It'll cause no more disturbance than cattle crossing creeks. I mean,
and TDEC will allow that
yeah,
to happen?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I don't believe that they require it for traditional septic sites, but if they require it, we'll go through with an individual ARAP or a general ARAP and get that covered.
Second question is, if I'm reading the existing grades versus proposed correctly, the roadway itself will capture all water and allow pass-through from north to south, correct?
Correct. The way we've graded the site is that water can spill over the northern curb line and get into our infrastructure.
And there's openings that look like it'll catch, also allow pass-through, so there won't be any damming up of water on those northern properties.
Correct. We made sure. Thank you.
Has there been a traffic study on Sulphur Springs Road to know this is not going to impact additional traffic?
Not for this development because of the number of lots, but they have done a traffic study recently. If you remember that big industrial development on the other side of 840, we had them look at, let me zoom out. My maps don't crash on me. So that awkward interchange, three-way stop, Leanna and Sulphur Springs, we had them study that. That is actually getting, bless you, a traffic signal right here. You know this area, 840 and these ramps actually, and this location of this awkward three-way stop causes the traffic to back up towards the interchange. So our thought was with this development on the western side of 840, if you remember those big warehouses that were approved, if this traffic is allowed to free flow west to east to west, without having to stop for a three-way stop, it would help alleviate the backup and help flow this traffic through here. So if somebody does come to the up Sulphur Springs to this three-way stop or this intersection, the traffic signal will trip and it will stop the east-west flow and allow a left or a right turn out of there. So that's about the closest evaluation to this property that's been made. But I think, how many lots do we have, Chris? 18 lots. We didn't feel that it was necessary to have them engage in a traffic study.
Other questions? Comments? Commissioner Bogle?
While we're here, could we go ahead and talk about the length of the roadway itself as far as the allowance and what challenges that poses, almost doubling that length, and how we can address that?
Typically, if I interpret it correctly, I think the ordinance made that restriction so that you don't have too many lots on a cul-de-sac lot that are constantly backing and forthing without a secondary connection. In this case, we're doing really large lots. We feel like traffic, I mean, this is probably 19 lots. We might be able to fit 19 on a 800-foot road pretty easily. So I think that my interpretation is I think that the spirit of this isn't warranted in this case. And the other concern we had is we gave right of way on the east side, but there is a conveyance on that side. And just one way to mitigate our impact is to just not cross it. And so it was kind of twofold. One, we don't have to cross a creek with a road. It benefits everybody. And two, I just didn't feel like 18 lots was going to pose a traffic issue for this length of road.
Any other questions for the applicant? If not, we'll ask you. Thank you. Commissioners? Other comments, questions, or a motion?
I have a question for staff, Mr. Chair. It's regarding the turnouts or turnarounds and cul-de-sacs and that sort of thing. So explain to us purpose of having one of those every so many, or why we set a maximum distance between those.
I think Mr. McGuire was on the right track when he was talking. A lot of it has to do with interconnectivity between developments. There's also, public safety element involved as well regarding that. However, I would agree with the statements he said about the justification for it. Also, we have made some changes to our regulations over time regarding cul-de-sac width and those kind of things. So there should be no issue as far as getting the trucks to turn around. Now Mr. Sanders is here, our fire marshal. He can certainly chime in, but that is a larger cul-de-sac that they're proposing there. But a lot of the time, it just has to do with those kind of issues. That's why you see those in most regulations.
So I've seen developments done in the county in the past that when you have a long distance, you put a little bow in the road there that's not really a cul-de-sac, but it's a place where it's just much wider there. So why is that just put in a random, somewhat centered place? I mean, is that so the vehicles, buses don't have to drive as far, or
That's
other
a
purpose
good
for it?
part of it, yeah. Just gives them another way to turn around, to get out, rather than having to go all the way down the cul-de-sac. I don't think, I forget exactly how long this was, but I don't know if that's really necessary to put something like that in here. I don't think it's long enough to warrant that particular type of a situation.
So it's over 2,900 feet in length, and our maximum is 1,600.
yeah.
Quite long.
Mr. Bogle?
Mike, I wanted to ask a question about development we just approved recently on, I guess it was off of State Route 99, Rockville area, that had a lot of sinkholes and a lot of challenges.
The Jurgen, I think is what it was called. That one right next to Rockville Meadows.
I think so, and I'm thinking back trying to compare, what we've done there to this one, and there was a whole lot of sinkholes in that area, but there were a lot more lots associated with that one as well, right? And so just trying to make some correlations for consistency,
Yes.
to make sure if we're looking at it in the same way as we did that one.
Yes, this actually came to us, and it had many more lots.
Yeah.
I think they'd even proposed doing a step system on it.
Yeah, we've seen that. We've seen, I think that one of the first iterations we saw was a bunch of private easements kind of scattered throughout the whole thing. Most of the lots being less than 5 acres in size. They were going to, just all kinds of waivers. We told them to come back and try again. They came back with that iteration that Mike is referring to, and we weren't comfortable with that either, just because of a lot of the issues we talked about today. So this was the third stab at it, if you will.
Yeah. You know me, anytime I see any development near a sinkhole, red flags go off and sirens in my head. This one, it has a more defined history of, connectivity of sinkholes. The Jurgen property, unfortunately, there are not that many dye traces for the Jurgen property, so I was very, very, very worried about that. Still am. actually.
Commissioner Whitworth?
The last 4 lots here, I believe, and my trifocals can't really see them, the 15, 16, 17, and 18, the houses are built behind the wet area there where there's a conveyance and a 60-foot right-of-way. Having dealt with wet weather conveyances for the last 50 years, there will be a day when those houses can't get out and go anywhere after we have a big rain, unless we do some changing on how the water is taken away. Because they will flood, and it will be where a car cannot pass out.
Yes, sir. And many of these lots, as long as they're in a environmentally sensitive area, an area of local or FEMA drainage concerns, will require what's called a critical lot grading plan. And so we'll want to see the grading of the house, the driveway, everything.
They will be allowed to grade up the driveway so it will
Yes.
be above the water.
Sir.
Will that affect the flow of everybody else, or will it back
Well,
it
they'll
up?
have to size culverts to allow that flow that comes through there. So some of these, the 60-foot water quality buffer is, if you recall, for a drainage basin with 1 square mile or greater. So it's got a huge watershed behind it. 1 square mile is 640 acres. So it's got a lot of water coming through there. So if you did want to build on the south side of that 60-foot stream, delineated stream, it would be have to be a substantial culvert to allow that.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner P.
I think for long-term planning, we can do better than this. So, if history repeats itself, which it usually does, you know, the first landowners may abide by those regulations, but the second and third owners are not. They're not going to be aware of them. You know, and this is the water that affects, as we know, have fact that, you know, it affects the water downstream for many miles. I just think this is, and I appreciate them redoing it, but I still think they can do better for a long-term plan. 18 may be too much for this particular property.
Are you offering us a motion? Commissioner Overwater.
I hate to keep beating on this, but also have a question about the 30-foot right-of-way dedication out front, and it notes say that it's anticipated that the other half would be provided should the neighboring properties ever develop. What is the likelihood of development across the street from this property? Is that a single-family home on a small lot that there's no chance of development, or a larger tract that may be developed at some point and they can help with the right-of-way?
Are you talking about along Sulphur Springs or on the backside of the development?
I'm assuming that would be along Sulphur Springs, where you mentioned where they're making a 30-foot.
Oh, that's on the backside of the property. Yeah, I'm
30-foot
sorry.
right-of-way.
Yeah, that's on the backside of the property. You know, what are the chances? You know, I don't have a good answer for that right now. I will say, though, that when we see these situations come up as property develops like this, I mean, this is something that's been kind of on the radar for the last, I'd say, couple of years now, just looking at it. When we see these tracks come in and we have the ability to have a dedication of right-of-way, we take them. Now, when you look at the overall map Mike's got there, I mean, you see larger tracks. Now, you know, what are the chances of that road improvement actually going through there? You know, a lot of these, especially on our long-range plans, the cities and the counties, I mean, these are lines on a map is what you're showing. See, that's the counties. Now, again, that's just a line on a map, and, you know, it's not a specific design by any means. So we felt more comfortable looking at like a dedication, especially if you compare it with what city's got on theirs. It's pretty much on that property line, that rear property line. I guess that'd be the east side. So we take those opportunities when we can to say, okay, incorporate this into your development. Now, when those other tracks develop, they may not. I mean, time will tell. It's hard to really say exactly are they going to or are they not. But when the opportunities do arise, that's why we like to have the plans that we have and keep them updated as much as we can so that we don't lose these opportunities.
Oddly enough, this plan shows it going right through Commissioner Rather's house. Sorry. Thought he'd like to know if he's here listening or whatnot.
I tend to agree. If I'm looking at this letter, current requirement is 1,600 feet or less roadway length, and we're requesting a variance to allow 2965. That 2965 is actually to catch those other lots. Without extending or making a exception, they wouldn't be able to service those lots, right?
The lots with themselves, they would just have to be pretty much larger. The cul-de-sac would have to terminate earlier, and the lots they just wouldn't be able to get as many off of it. So in essence, what you're saying is accurate.
I'd make a motion to deny this.
Have a motion to deny. We have a second. Further discussion? Mr. P. Wait a second, the motion. If not, all those in favor for denial, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Has been denied. Moving now into item A, submitted for final plat approval. Item 1, Hill Road, one lot subdivision, 23-2029, one lot on 1 acre, zoned RL, located at 4052 Hill Road. Jeffrey Turner is the applicant. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. The applicant's proposing to split about 1 acre from a 6.5-acre tract. The remaining acreage will include the existing house. They do have a septic site that's been identified on the new parcel. Correspondence from CUT indicates that a fire hydrant cannot be supported at this location, so they have requested a waiver to the fire hydrant provisions as part of their plat approval today. The plat in and of itself is in good order. Our comments have been addressed. The only reason it's coming before you today is due to the fire hydrant waiver request. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Chairman, does staff recommend approval?
With the condition of the waiver being approved, yes, sir.
Recommend approve.
Motion to approve, have a second. All those in favor, and your motion is made with staff comments and a waiver? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Is approved. Item 2, Smith Farm, Section 2A, 23-2046, 58 lots, 56 are residential on 15.51 acres, Zone PUD, located along Blackman Road, Smith Farms Development, LLC. Applicant, Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. The preliminary plan for this development was approved by the Planning Commission back in May of 2019. This final plat is consistent with that preliminary plan approval. This plat, when it came in, we did our review. It was actually in pretty good shape. We had a few comments that needed to be addressed. They have done that. We're satisfied with what they've done, and we'd recommend approval.
One quick question, Mr. Chairman. 2019, does that preliminary approval meet the time requirements?
Yes, the preliminary plans are valid for 2 years after they're approved. Once you lock in that first section and everything with a final plat, you don't have to go back and renew it or anything. It's fine.
Comments, questions, or motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve, subject to any staff comments.
Have a motion, have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, it has been approved. Item 3, Clearview Acres, Section 5, 23-2048, 48 lots, 47 residential on 37.8 acres, Zone PUD, located along Compass Way off of Walnut Grove Road. 3BC LLC is the applicant. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. The preliminary plan for this development was approved back in October of 2016. Again, this final plat is consistent with that preliminary approval. Our comments have been addressed. We do recommend approval of this.
Commissioners, questions, comments?
Move to approve with staff comments.
Motion to approve has been made. Second, Commissioner Averwater. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, it has been approved. Moving now to Section C, submitted for site plan approval. Item 1, PrimeTime C-Store, 23-3017, construction of 3,789 square foot convenience store with canopy on 3.52 acres. Zone CS, located along Sulphur Springs Road. Chad Calderary is the applicant. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. The applicant's proposing to construct a gas station convenience market on this property. You've seen this plan in the past, back in March of 2021. However, no construction was ever started, so they're bringing it back because the site plan approval has expired, and they have made some tweaks and changes to it as well. This market is going to focus on passenger vehicles, private passenger vehicles. They do show a diesel pump area for larger vehicles. However, it's not going to be a truck stop. This was a concern that we actually had as staff and discussed with the applicant. They have no desire to put a truck stop. You do see a couple of larger spaces kind of on, I guess that'd be the top or the eastern side of the property. They are going to put some signage. That's just for delivery vehicles, larger delivery vehicles. They're not going to be using that for any kind of a truck stop, overnight parking, anything like that. So staff was comfortable with that. There's also proposed improvements to Sulphur Springs Road. There'll be a right-hand and left-hand turn lanes installed onto frontage Road J and Timberlake Drive to help accommodate the traffic. As future development does occur along the stretch of Sulphur Springs Road, turn lane improvements will also be extended heading toward the east, toward that intersection Mike was talking about a little earlier, toward that three-way intersection at Leanna Road. and Sulphur Springs. A portion of the right-of-way for frontage road K, which is the one that runs in front of the property, Mike's kind of highlighting in that area. A portion of that right-of-way was recently abandoned by the Rutherford County Road Board and will become part of the subject property as part of their development. For the most part, staff's comments have been addressed. There is a large TVA easement that runs through this property, which really impacted the design. Mike's kind of highlighting it right there. It's why everything's kind of crammed on one side of the property. Of course, you can have parking and maneuvering areas, but you can't have any permanent buildings there. So with that, I'm going to let Mike discuss any drainage concerns that are still outstanding, but most of our comments have been addressed.
Right, thank you, Douglas. Now, just some minor tweaking of the plans will be required, but it's mostly in good order. They do have a on-site conventional septic system area here underneath the TVA easement, and everything funnels to a stormwater management area on the, I guess it'll be the south end of the property in this area that parallels frontage road J. So all in all, it's in good order.
Commissioners? Questions or comments? Have a motion to approve. Have a second. Commissioner Bogle. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, it has been approved. Item 2, Rutherford County Temple 233025, construction of a 36,437 square foot medium community assembly facility, religious facility on 15.9 acres zoned RM located at 4295 Chevelville Pike. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir. Thank you. A special exception was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals for the medium community assembly use back in May of 2020. Just to give a quick overview of what a medium community assembly use is, anything that's less than the occupant, let me back up. The occupancy is determined by the how many persons can be accommodated in the largest meeting area, which is typically what we would say like as a worship center or a sanctuary, something like that. If that occupancy is less than 150, it's considered small and is allowed by right in residential areas. If it's between 150 and 500, it's considered medium, which is allowed by special exception in residential zones. And if it's greater than 500, that has to go for a rezoning to institutional, which is brought through the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners. So this one falls in the middle, which is why it went to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And the site plan that you have before you does reflect the proposed use. We did have several comments on this that we did send to the applicant's design engineer. They have pretty much addressed those comments. I think there's some outstanding drainage issues that Mike will want to discuss briefly. But from a planning and zoning standpoint, at least, our comments have been addressed. And we'll be happy to answer any questions. And Mike, I'll let you discuss any drainage concerns that you might have had with
Thank you, Douglas. They are proposing several features for stormwater quality and quantity. The parking spaces will be the brick pavers to help infiltrate into the ground with under drains. The front of the temple will have two rain gardens that the downspouts from the temple will flow into, and then there will be a pond towards Chevelville Pike that the ultimate water quantity and quality will be treated before it's released. Just another factor that they are putting in a southbound left turn lane, and they are going to utilize the existing median opening here and have their driveways line up with that. For reference, this is Chevelville Pike, Rucker Lane, right here. There's that traffic signal right there. And it's kind of midway between Rucker and Crescent Lane. This is Candy's Campers, if you know about where that's at. So it's going to be right here in this yellow highlighted parcel. Yeah, there is a little church right next door.
What was that again, Mike?
There is a little church right to the south of it, and I'll zoom into that. right here is this. Yes, yes, sir. And I'll go to another. No, that was the previous one. This is the church here, and this is the property here. And what Doug was talking about, with the proposed pavers, rain gardens, and everything, you can see the high rock on the property. They are bringing some material in to build up the site, but they'll have to over-excavate all that rock out. And we'll have to work with the design staff on tweaking the designs. But it's going to be a challenge to get anything to infiltrate. Yes. Septic system, yes, sir. It will be a conventional septic system.
I hadn't seen anything that shows septic site on here.
It's on one of the farther plans in the back. And it has been identified by soil scientists. I think there's a backup area here, but they will have 2 tanks, a dosing tank and a drip dispersal tank. It's going to be essentially like a step system for the church. I don't know if CUD is going to be, nope, CUD is not going to be maintaining that. It'll be maintained by a private company.
Mike, you mentioned excavation. Is there a detention pond? I didn't see it. Maybe there is, but I didn't see it.
Yes, sir. In this area here.
Okay, so that's going to ensure that all water that's created is held within that development and it won't impact any of the property surrounding it?
Yes, sir. Right. And that's what we look at. What leaves the site before any development happens, and then we evaluate the site after it's happened and what they have to hold back and release. So yes, sir, that's part of, it'll be a whole design system. These brick pavers will have under drains with them as well, so water will be able to filter their way to this pond. So they will be looking at water quality and quantity.
We've seen a lot of growth in a lot of churches, and they're building new facilities, and which is probably good. Is this an existing church that's building from someplace else, or is this kind of a new establishment?
I believe it's a Hindu temple, I believe. So it's a brand new to the area, I believe.
Other questions?
Staff feels comfortable with the preliminary plan, so all the comments that you've made would have to be addressed before anything is issued, any permits.
That's correct. The next step after this, they would have to have a pre-construction meeting. Of course, that won't happen until all the engineering comments and the planning comments for that matter, everything is addressed to our satisfaction. So we wouldn't let them progress to that point until we had an approved set of plans.
There's no other questions with that. I'm moved for approval, subject to all staff comments.
Motion has been approved. Commissioner Phillips, and a second by Commissioner Averwater. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it has been approved. This is the majority of our business. I'm moving now to staff reports and other business. Before I turn it over to Mr. DeMasi, I want to say we have some people here this morning that's interested in the next part of our program. I want to welcome some commissioners that are here this morning, and particularly Commissioner Phil Dodd is here with us this morning, Commissioner Anthony Johnson, Shanto Sereno. Glad to have you here, gentlemen. I don't think any other commissioners have come in, but we're glad to have you this morning as part of us to learn a little bit more about Plan Rutherford. So,
yes,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I appreciate the quick introduction of those who are here. As you know, we've been involved in a process to update our comprehensive plan, which was adopted back in 2011. This has been something that was been going on for the last couple years. We have had a couple of steering committee meetings and several other meetings as well, community meetings. There's also been a lot of work going on behind the scenes as far as data compilation and putting that together, kind of seeing what the trends and everything look like, taking those comments that were received from our community meetings that we've had and kind of compiling all those. And we have with us today Jessica Hill from GNRC. That's the Greater Nashville Regional Council. They're the ones that are doing our plan update. And she has a presentation here based on a lot of information. I've been kind of skimming through this even when we were going to do this last month. Unfortunately, weren't able to do that, but there's a lot of good information here. So I'll ask Jessica to go ahead and come up, and we'll let her take it from there.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I apologize that I was not able to attend last month, but it actually worked out in the sense that we almost had 250 more people take the survey in that time, so I have updated survey input for you. But again, my name is Jessica Hill. I'm the Director of Community and Regional Planning with the Greater Nashville Regional Council, and we're assisting you all in the county to update your 2011 adopted comprehensive plan. So just really quickly, this is a brief overview of what I'll cover today. Just again, giving you an overview of the kind of the 5 basics of what, why, how of the comprehensive plan, the work that we've done so far, what the data shows, what we've heard from your community members, and then what our next steps are going to be. So again, I know many of you are involved in the comprehensive plan, and some of you were involved in the 2011 adoption of that plan as well. So really, it is a county-wide initiative to engage your residents and business leaders and stakeholders to understand what it is in the county that they want, they value, they would like to preserve and conserve in the future, and also where they would like to see future investments in. It may be infrastructure, it could be programs, it could be services, but really to just understand what it is that your community members and your business leaders are looking for the county, and what aspects need to be invested in. So the comprehensive plan addresses those topics that people experience and live. I know just today we saw a lot of discussion around land development and where houses and infrastructure are going to go, and that's one key component of the comprehensive plan as an element of the future land use. So again, we're updating the adopted 2011 comprehensive plan to identify the practices and plans, really to what is working, what needs to be changed or modified, and what needs to be kept out of that plan. Looking at what are your challenges in the county, if those are different from 12 years ago, and what are also some of the opportunities now with this growth and change that is coming in that you can build upon and take advantage of. And making sure that shared vision still resonates with your community, and modifying it to meet either the future or the current trends as we see that, but also understand what's coming in the next 25 years. And addressing any important issues that affect the community. I know a lot of the topography and the agricultural roots of Rutherford County are a prime example of some of the areas that we've heard from you all as leaders, but also from the community express being very critical to the future vision and values that they place. So as you all probably know, you're one of the fastest growing counties in the state. By 2045, we're looking at over 500,000 people residing potentially in Rutherford County. And that growth, is, as you can see, is just exponential. I know you've experienced a lot since 2000. That growth impacts your schools, it impacts your roads, it impacts housing, retail, job, everything. So really just understanding what that additional almost 30,000 or 20,000, 200,000 people, excuse me, I can't get my math right on a Monday, will look like in 25 years. So really just walk you through the process. Where we are right now is we're closing out the first phase, which is what we like to call the listening phase, to understand what the values and expectations are from you as the leaders of the community, but also from residents and business leaders. We're moving into that phase 2 to understand, we like to call it the brainstorming, the what if, so using urban footprint to run scenarios based off of how you could potentially develop in the community. So we have run a business as usual, we've run a sprawl, and we'll run a compact for staff to review, and then we'll tweak it a little bit and then present it back to the steering committee and the public for their input and feedback. And ultimately, what we tend to happen is a mix of those scenarios for what becomes your preferred growth pattern, which will feed into your future land use map that then you may need to change your zoning maps to match. And then the final step, which is the deciding, is really where we talk about what that future land use map, the growth is going to have on your policies, programs, and services, and what recommendations we may have for you all as a county, but also for other infrastructure and utility providers to make sure that we're providing the services that the public really would like to see and have. So where we are now, again, we're closing out that phase 1, the vision and expectations, that listening tour. And so coming up in a month, on August 22nd, will be a town hall event. We've got a public speaker, or a keynote speaker. It's Brooks Lamb with the American Farmland Trust. Conservation and preservation of agriculture was a very strong element that we heard from you all, as well as your community members. And so he is going to come talk about his, I think now released book, Love for the Land, and I think he's a Rutherford or Williamson County native. So he will be here as our keynote, and I'll have more details to share with you coming up in the next couple of weeks. But of course, we would really love to have you all there and join us, and it will be at the MTSU campus. All right, so what we've done, the activities, again, Doug, thank you for the quick overview, but just to provide you with some information on what we've done so far during that listening phase. We've had 5 public meetings. The first was a big kickoff in March of last year, followed by 4 community meetings spread out throughout the county: Rockvale, Pleasant View, Las Casas. I'm sorry, I always get Las Casas wrong. And Smyrna, thank you. So those were the 5 in-person meetings that we held, and we also have had an online survey available since February of last year. And again, like I mentioned, we had over 250 people take it in the last month, so I really appreciate it. If one of you was the one that shared that link out, it was great to have that much more input. Again, it's still live, so feel free to continue to share that. But again, we've got now 644 responses as of last Thursday. And then we've conducted 23 either interviews or stakeholder meetings as part of this process. So the data that we've done so far is looking at your conditions and trends report. Again, these are the primary topics that we've gone through and have all that information and data for. I'm happy to share the full report of that if you would like, but I know staff has had a chance to review it, and we'll make sure it's updated before we do a final plan. And then again, the scenario analysis, the business as usual, the sprawl, and the compact. We'll be running compact this week for staff's review, and then we'll get it to the steering committee. So what does the data show? So really quickly, this is just, as you probably are very well aware, the significant upward trend line of your population since the 2000s, with a lot of population growth. Again, 2020, you had 341. We're expecting upwards of over half a million people by 2045. And that's the full county. This next graph is just looking at the unincorporated county, so taking out the populations of the municipalities. So in 2020, in the unincorporated county, you have about a little less than 100,000 people, so 96,115. But by 2045, that unincorporated county population we estimate to be right around 230,000. So the vast majority of the population we're anticipating to be in the municipalities, but there is still quite a bit of significant growth in the unincorporated county. Again, this is also just unincorporated county, looking at the age characteristics of your population. I think most of us probably have heard the silvering of the United States, just folks that are over 65, and the services and programs that we need to make sure that we provide, and as well as the health care and costs. But you also are seeing still a good significant proportion of under 18, which is your school-age children that rely on your public schools and education. And then you do have a large chunk of your working population, the 18 to 55, that are going to be working in your employment sectors. Let's see. Oh, so minority population, you are getting more diverse, and since 2000, in 2020, you had almost about 20% of your population is what we would consider a more minority population. Your median household income also has increased. In 2021, it was almost $73,000. It's not going back. All right, so probably as you all have seen through the subdivision process review, a lot of your housing units that you've added in are single family, one unit detached with very little other approvals for multifamily or apartments, and then actually a reduction in mobile homes, which typically we see when land becomes more valuable, that land is sold and put into other uses. Zillow provides the annual home value estimates. So as you can see, the Rutherford County has some of the highest, higher than the U.S. home values. Believe in only Laverne has the lowest home values, right around the 300,000. And this is again average. Your rent is also relatively high. In comparison, or actually it's lower than the U.S. Rent rate, with Laverne actually having the higher average monthly rent over time, which is an interesting trend that we're seeing. Educational attainment, and again, this is unincorporated county. You are attracting higher educated people. That relates to the next slide, which is the industries that are within the county. So again, your less than high school rate is, I think it's right at 7% now in the unincorporated county, which is a really good trend to see. You always, this goes back to the level of jobs, the higher education, higher skills. In the county since 2000, you can see the trend in the industries. Healthcare healthcare and education services has really increased significantly, while manufacturing has reduced, gone down since 2000. So it's an interesting trend to see, but I think it relates back to also that educational attainment that we're also seeing. All right, so looking at just a very high, it's done. Looking at just a very high level super sector employment, this is just looking at it, or categorizing it into 3 sectors. So the trade, transportation, the service industry, and the goods producing. So a lot of the service producing is expanding. I think it's almost more than 70% in Rutherford County is in the service producing, and goods producing is right around the 20%, and trade, transportation is 10%. So you can see that services sectors are increasing. So when we think about people traveling to work, those are folks that are using the roads, all the infrastructure, accessing to the highway. They're creating all that traffic congestion that we hear in the surveys that people dislike. But a lot of people are traveling by cars, trucks, and single occupancy vehicle. We have, since the pandemic, seen a lot more increase in work from home. I think Rutherford County has about a 12% work from home right now when the last data was pulled in 2021. So that's an interesting trend that we're seeing across the United States, but also in the county for sure. Now this is looking at your 2020 distribution of people and jobs, with the darker blue being a higher density and then the greener shades being more dispersed. And then projecting that same, oh my, oh wait, nope, it's going forward for me again. Go to the 2045 map for me. All right, so as you can see, this is looking at it as your business as usual. A lot of the growth is dispersing outwards, and of course the unincorporated county is seeing a lot more growth in the 20% range, or excuse me, 100 to 500 people. All right, so next slide. What we've heard from the community, and this is through those public meetings, but also the online survey. This is just a chart of who's participated in our survey, the online survey only. 75% of the folks that live in the city, or that live in the county, they live in a municipality in the county. And of those folks, the largest is, of course, Murfreesboro, with about 80% reporting that they live in Murfreesboro. Now, when you ask the survey respondents what would they say are their top 3 most appealing characteristics, next slide, they're, as no surprise, quality schools, location to family and friends, and the proximity to Nashville are the 3 most appealing characteristics of the county. And then when we talk to folks in those 5 public meetings, when we ask them what their opportunities and concerns were for the county, next slide, please. A lot of what we're hearing on opportunities, there's a really significant interest in parks and greenways, and I know Rutherford County does not have a parks or recreation department, but that is a significant trend that we're seeing both in the in-person meetings as well as in the online surveys. Now, concerns are, of course, very related to growth and development, congestion, lower quality of life, loss of green spaces and farmland, and traffic were some of the top in-person concerns that we've heard. Now, when we asked in the survey, we asked it in a different way. Next slide, please. We asked what the top challenges were, and it was an open response, so this is our best at categorizing open response comments, but As you can see, traffic congestion is the top concern for most folks, as well, and then followed by the growth pressures and the education quality in schools are the top three challenges that people see ahead for Rutherford County. And then when we ask them about opportunities, again, next slide, economic growth and employment was the top opportunity for Rutherford County that they saw, but also related is what we all are doing here today, talking about a comp plan, well-planned growth and development, so making sure that we have those policies in place to guide development into the future. And then education equality and funding is the third opportunity that they see. Again, as I'm sure you all know, Rutherford County has some of the strongest, best schools in the state. So lots of folks are still moving to the county for that. And the last question we asked is in terms of what were the major goals or the top goals that people wanted us to focus on in the comprehensive plan. Again, I think it relates back to the first conversation of the day, protect the natural environment, those features that make Rutherford County unique, conserve surrounding open space and farmland, and then improve transportation options, followed by access to housing. So I don't think anything on this list is too surprising to you all. It's kind of what we anticipated to see. So now that we've received this input from the steering committee, the interlocal government coordination task force, and your residents, we will be presenting it back to them on August, again, the town hall next month, to make sure that we heard them accurately, if we need to modify, and then we'll confirm that these are the areas, the top areas of interest, so we can start putting more focus on them and how they will relate to that scenario planning. So next slide. So again, we're moving into that scenario planning, looking at the business as usual, the sprawl, and the compact growth. And we will be coming out to the town hall to do a closeout of the listening phase and kick off the scenario planning phase. And we will also be holding community-wide workshops for public and stakeholders to come out and provide their input on those scenario growth patterns, which will then end up guiding the development of that preferred growth scenario. So your future land use map will ultimately be the outcome of the next steps. So that is all in my presentation that I have for you all. Again, if more information is on the website at planrutherford.org. Additional information on the August, again, I'm going to say the date like 8 times, August 22nd at MTSU. We'll get all that information out to you all. It is going to be, doors will open at 5 with the formal kickoff at 6. But we'll get you all the information. We would love if you would help make sure your community members are aware, if you share it out, and come and encourage everybody to participate. And I guess, Chair, I will be happy to take any questions.
Questions, anyone? Commissioner P?
I know this has been worked on for a while, but what is the ending date? I mean, these are tools that we needed 2 years ago. So we're anxious to be able to use those tools. So when is the completion date?
It will depend on public engagement involvement, but our goal is to have a draft ready for review by December.
Could you use your mic?
I noticed in your home values, Eagleville was not cut out separately for that, and they've had quite a bit of growth there. I was just wondering why we left that city off.
So Zillow is where we get our data from, and Eagleville is not large enough or has enough data for it to be reportable from Zillow for us, unfortunately. But if you have access to that information, we'd love to find out, and I can reach out to you.
If I could kind of chime in on that too, when I was putting together some population projections and things for other presentations before, the census data, of course, it's trickling out, it's coming out, but we run into the same problem with the municipalities. They only do it for those over a certain population, and so you kind of have to extrapolate from there sometimes.
I had to answer the mayor this morning. We're showing in here 2020 total growth, I think around 341.
Yeah.
That's what we're showing right now. We have a report back here for the county right now. We're looking at somewhere around pretty close to 370 for the county, and that's for 2023. So that gives you some idea of what our growth is and our concerns and why we're doing what we're doing. The rapid growth from 2020 to currently, we're pushing 370.
You know, another thing I noticed, I made a comment since the first time you did the survey, we had 3 or 5% on minority, which is now at 19.4%. My thoughts are with the open borders across Texas, people moving in, what makes up a minority? Because I can go to Home Depot and I have no doubt that number has definitely changed since 20.
Yeah. That's a great question. So when we look at minority, we include race and ethnicity. So a minority is a non-white and non-ethnicity. Yep.
We also have on here the terminology as number 2, well-planned growth and policy innovation. Term well-planned growth is something, falls right in there with affordable housing. You know, how do you come about with well-planned growth? And I think our goal is how do we do that? How do we look at that and what we've got to do? So it's a challenge, every bit of this. I think it's what Jessica has shown here as when we went out in these public meetings trying to get people to tell us what they wanted. If you'll look at where a lot of the comments come from, I think Commissioner P will tell you, I spoke to the Farm Bureau last week, and I sort of chastised them. I said, how many of you were at those public meetings that come up here and voiced your opinion while you're wanting out here in these the rural areas? And I didn't get a whole lot of hands that showed up. And I said, if you want your voice heard, you've got to be there. And you've got to put that out, because a lot of the people that come out for those meetings were people who are still in our urban areas. So these are things that we have to look at and meet that challenge. And I think the things that we're still putting out there, the things we're still asking for, we still have to get those things. Mr. Phillips.
It seems like at planning for the last year or so, Mr. Chairman, everything that's come out of my mouth has seemed negative, and I don't mean it to be that way. A lot of us as county commissioners ran on a garbage issue, because that was an issue that was on most people's mind because of lawsuits and other types of things. I as well made garbage a large part of my communication process during the election cycle. But the reason, not the only reason, but the main reason that I run was this comprehensive plan. I've been elected chairman of the Rutherford County Commission. My expectation was to have this comprehensive plan before the county commission by the end of this year. And now you're telling me that's not going to happen. One of the reasons that it's important to us as a commission, hopefully I'm speaking for the commission, is simply because of what's happening in Rutherford County. You've seen it today. You've personally seen that. Every incorporated city has the opportunity to implement some type of growth tax. Rutherford County does not. Murfreesboro just implemented an $8,000 impact fee. Rutherford County cannot do that. What's happening is that with the implementation of these growth taxes, it's creating exponential growth within the county. Not only from within Rutherford County, but we're seeing developers from not only all over the state, especially Middle Tennessee, but from outside the state coming in and investing in Rutherford County because it's cheap. That is not in the long-term best interest of Rutherford County citizens. This comprehensive plan needs to be what is in the best interest of Rutherford County citizens long-term, not short-term, and not in any special interest group. It's important that it's done right, but it's important that we get this thing done as quickly as possible. That's not your fault. I'm really glad you guys are involved in this process. What happened 12 years ago when this process was first implemented was that our Planning Commission, the steering committee, had some proposals, put it out to the public, and that comprehensive plan was watered down quite a bit. Also the expectation of hopefully this county commission that that will not happen this time. This comprehensive plan must have the opportunity for us to control what goes where and the density of what goes where. You need to keep that in mind. The steering committee needs to keep that in mind. We need to correct zoning mistakes that we've made in the past. We need to look at farmland being zoned farmland, not what it is right now. Let me just use this as an example, you guys. I'm going to where I didn't want to go, but let me just use this as an example. The development that we said no to, the developers from Williamson County, if this development was in Williamson County, that developer could not develop it because it has 5-acre restrictions. That's the type of thing that we must have in this comprehensive plan. I expect, on behalf of the county commission, I expect that this comprehensive plan steering committee will take those type of things in consideration. That is our expectation. And once again, I'm probably not speaking for every county commissioner, but what we want is what is in the long-term best interest of the citizens of Rutherford County, especially in unincorporated areas. We need the type of plan that we can count on for the next 30, 35 years. So I apologize for getting up on a soapbox, but I'm a native of Rutherford County. I've never lived anywhere else. I've been on the county commission for 30 years. I've been on this planning commission for 30 years. And I think I'm speaking for a lot of Rutherford County natives that we still care, and we want this comprehensive plan to be a vision as to how we can get to what the citizens want, and saw planned growth as being top on that list. That's what it has to be. And that's what, once again, I think this planning commission wants. I also think that the county commission not only wants, but is going to expect and almost demand. So I'm a little disappointed. I don't want to wait till next summer for this thing to be in effect. I'd like to see it this year, but if that's the best you can do, that's the best you can do. But work hard and expedite it.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate those comments and what you said there. And you mentioned the fact about solid waste. I don't know if you noticed one of the things when we asked people what they thought was important in here, and that's where I pulled out well-planned growth and policy innovation was number 2. Did you see where fixing solid waste issues was on that schedule? next to last. I mean, you know, when you're trying to figure out what people want and what they want to do, it's very difficult when you're doing that. But for several years, in fact 30 years, I operated one of the largest printing departments in Middle Tennessee, or was over it. And we had a sign in that printing department. And it said, you can get your order either quick, cheap, or good. Pick one. And, you know, that's pretty good of what we're trying to do right here. I'm on that steering committee. Commissioner P is on that steering committee. And when we sit down to do this, you know, you think right off the bat, okay, what do we do? And then all of a sudden, you're handed all of this. And we're still trying to figure that out. I remember the last comprehensive plan we did. And we approved that in 11, isn't that right? By 13 or 14, pretty much out of date. That fast. Well, when you're sitting here and you're dealing with a train that's coming at you, and I just mentioned the fact of where we've gone in the last 2 years as far as population is moving on us and what we're having to do here, and you're totally right. We've got to have something that works and do it right. And I think that's what your steering committee is going to do. The individuals that's on that steering committee is a good group of individuals that's going to be thinking that direction. We're at that point now where we can start putting something together and start going that way. I think it was at the very beginning when we started back in cold weather. And that's hard to remember, back in cold weather. But we knew coming into the years where we were shooting for and going that direction. But I think, like I said there, quick, cheap, or good, I think what our determination is something good that we can work with and go that direction. And we hope we meet your expectations when we go that way and going that way. Any other questions we might have for Jessica? Maybe on the 22nd, we can have a good turnout for that one too, because we'll be talking about some things that is right in this. It goes right along with what we're trying to accomplish there, trying to fix some things as far as our what we're doing right here too. Because what we've seen in some of the property today, what we see in some of the property, seems like every time we meet here, I see this filter that you pull up there of the sinkholes. I feel like I'm back in the 60s looking at pictures of the moon when we first got to see the moonscape. And that's what we're starting to see out here of what the land is looking like to us here in Rutherford County. That will affect some of our growth and what happens out those directions. Commissioner?
Ms. Jessica, you said it would be at MTSU on the 22nd. Do you have a building? What venue are we going to be in, or do we know that yet?
I am going to go tour it in like 5 minutes. So we are either at the College of Concrete and Construction Materials or the Student Union. So once I tour it this morning, I will have a final site.
Good deal. We'll make sure everybody knows.
Jessica, when did you say the cutoff date for the survey?
It is still live. We're always going to keep that live.
Okay.
We don't shut any of our surveys down.
It would be great if you'd have to have Murphy Center to have that many people to come see it.
I like the way you think. Any other questions? Mr. P.
Is there any public social media announcement for the August 22nd? I know it's easy. If I see that, I can just forward it. You know, are there any public announcements or will be made about that open hearing?
So we're going to, once we have the location picked today, we'll have a press release that can go to the newspapers and TV outlets, and we will also provide social media post like statements that the county and commissioners and you all, please, if you all would help put it on your social media and help get the word out, that would be great. But yes, we will have those templates ready for you to go.
Anyone else? If not, thank you. All right, I think that concludes our business. The next Planning Commission meeting will be on August 14th here in the courthouse. If there's no further business, our meeting is adjourned.